Alright, here's my second video of the day on the RC bench. I just did the Element Enduro update, and before I get into the CR01, which is what this video is about, I want to mention a few things I forgot about the Enduro. I am running the green silicone inserts for 1.9 tires in the Enduro, and also with that caster change that I did, I had to add a little spacer on the lower end of the track bar, or the panhard bar, to give a little space away from the shock absorber, because when you tilt the caster back you get some interference with the stock setup with the shock. Anyway, moving on. Here's the CR01. I did mention it in the previous video a few times. I have been running it and I have been enjoying it. But I have been making a lot of tweaks and changes and breaking things and rethinking a few different things. So I did print out, and I am running my anti-foams design in these Proline Swamper TSL SX XLs, and they are much more supple, and the traction has been multiplied, and because of that I've been breaking pinion gears. Like I mentioned, I broke the front pinion gear one day, fixed it, then broke the rear the next day. The front replacement is an older part, so the quality I don't think is as good as the new parts that I got. The rear has the new part in it, the pinion gear. Like I said, they look nicer quality than the older parts, so they must have done some tooling updates at Tamiya. But it's still a concern with the size of these tires and the amount of traction I have, and the gear reduction is about 60-1. I'm running a 13 tooth pinion with that 35 CR tuned 35 turn motor, the Tamiya motor. I have to see, I might be able to turn down my punch or something on the ESC to help with that, but I am running that same, I can run this a 3S, the small Z pack, or I can run, where did I put it? This is what I originally intended, the Ovonic 3S. They're the same capacity, different sizes. I actually like this because it's a little thicker, right? And I can move it farther up into the front of the vehicle to give me more forward bias. So I'm probably going to continue running that for that reason. But I did need to put a Velcro strap in. I might have to change how I lock the battery down. To further help with that weight distribution, I don't have scales. I want to get scales. I want to see what's happening here. It does feel heavier in the front even with the battery out. I am running a couple lead weights in different spots, not a ton of weight on the front axle. I don't know if you can even see them. Maybe, yeah. There's a stick-on weight here, and there's one above the axle, in between the servo mount plate. You can't see. So there's like 3 weights. What are they? I don't even know what. 7 ounces each? No, that doesn't make any sense. Hold on. Here's a strip of them. They are a 1/4 ounce each, 7 grams a piece. So I have 3 of them on here, I think. Not much, but it's something. I'm thinking about this roll cage. It's starting to break down. I broke it. It doesn't glue. I'm probably going to redo it. It looks a little small. It's a little silly looking for the size of this thing, because I did extend the rear wheelbase to give it better climbing ability. I also added a bunch of brass to it. I don't know if I talked about the brass in the first video I did, but I did do the control arms with those brass hex standoffs. lower, upper. They're all these. I may have touched on that, but I also bought some real heavy brass stock, and I believe it is 7mm. Yeah, 7mm OD with maybe a 2.5mm ID, and you can make, you know, it's a thick wall. It's a heavy wall. It's like 2.5mm wall. This stuff is legit. It's hard to machine actually, to tap out and thread in rod, you know, for the rod ends. But it works, and I made the lower links for the steering out of that. Upper links are the hex stock, so it gives it a little bit more weight. I also, while I'm on the steering, I made some little extensions for the steering arms, and what that does is it makes it 0 Ackerman. The way that this thing comes set up is with reverse Ackerman, just like the Clodbuster. So now it has no Ackerman, so each tire turns the same angle. The front, you know, this thing is one of its main weaknesses, other than the pinion gear, is the fact that it doesn't have a lot of steering angle. I did upgrade the knuckles to aluminum. The inner C and the knuckle steering arm are aluminum. I did have to clearance this so that it would steer. It actually steers more than stock now, which is nice. I think it's about 35 degrees. The rear I did not clearance, so it does not steer as much, but it's rear, so I don't need it as much as the front. But so this is steering better than stock. It's steering more, and it's steering with equal angle on each side. Just by making some little adapters. I'll get this eventually. So I could run that mounting point. Kind of dictates how the steering responds. If the mounting point is inward from the pivot, then you are going to get reverse Ackerman, which means the inner tire is going to steer less than the outer tire on a turn, which is the opposite of what you want, unless you're in Formula One. But for rock crawlers and people driving on the street, you want Ackerman where your inner tire turns more than your outer tire, because you have different radiuses, steering radiuses for each one based on how long your wheelbase is and whatnot. So that was easy to do. I did have to space the tires out so I could fit this offset here. I was running some kind of, I didn't really like these spacers, but you know, these ones you see on YouTube, on Amazon or eBay, the aluminum spacer with the brass threaded nut, long nut. They were okay. They kept loosening up, so I decided to change it because I wanted to add some actual weight. So I did put those same brass hubs in here, right there, right, and I had to make a wheel spacer to adapt. It's you're not gonna be able to see. It's 3D printed wheel spacer. She's, what is it, 15 millimeters long. So I had to. Now I can actually run a regular nut because that hole in the new spacer goes right down to that brass adapter. Still, the stub sticks out not quite enough. I'm gonna have to Loctite these, and I may machine some material off of that spacer to give me a little bit more nut engagement. But for now, it's fine. I just gotta keep an eye on it. So let's see, what's my, I got 9 1/4 center to center on the wheels. So what's the outer? About 11 1/2 width with these. And then back to the wheelbase. Like I said, I extended the wheelbase, so now you can see the servos sticking out. Where in the front it's sticking out just a hair, in the back it's sticking out a couple hairs. So what's my wheelbase? I think it's 12 1/2 maybe just a little bit more than 12.5 inches, but it's pretty close. 12.5, I'd say, is good. All I did was put the, you know, I got my wife's hairs all over these things. That's what you get for driving in the living room. All right. Put the long Traxxas rod ends on here versus the short in the front. So whatever the difference is, I'm thinking, what's this? That's about 25 center to end, and this is 17 center to end. So that would be 8 millimeters each. So like so that's like 3/4 of an inch longer wheelbase in the back, or extension to the back, right? So that made a huge difference in how this thing climbs, along with the traction. And this is a totally different vehicle than it was. I did change the shocks. I did have to put a shock mount extension in the back. These are some really cheap shocks from Amazon, which needed to be completely rebuilt. They had some stinky, nasty oil in there, and they had no dampening ability. They did have dampening. They did have springs internally, which I took out because I don't need them for this setup. But I did have to change the pistons out because they had the slots. They didn't have any damping ability or resistance inside. I did find some. I think I don't even know where they might be Team Losi old, from like 20-30 years ago pistons. They fit in here. They're a little finicky. One set was a little tighter than the other, so I actually ran different pistons, and I believe it's about 10 millimeter diameter approximately. I think on one set I had to run something slightly undersized, and on the other set the 10 millimeter fit. I'm running 100 weight oil in the rears, and I think 50 in the front. I could go heavier in the front because this has the cantilever suspension. We are mounted to the axle with a little arm, right? And there's a couple different mounting locations. I basically set it up so you have the shock has more mechanical advantage over the axle than the opposite, so that, you know, the shocks are more, or actually add more damping effect. The rear is really nice. I mean, this thing needs heavyweight shock oil, but you get a lot of articulation with this setup, almost too much. I do love the way it looks with these springs. It's just so different. I like the cantilever setup, but it flexes too much. It can stretch the springs. It can pop the springs out of the buckets, the seats. So I am going to work on some limiting straps for this. But we got about a 2.5 inch clearance at the skid, and because of these huge tires, and we're not running portals, we need the big tires for clearance. We have plenty of gear reduction, 60 to 1, and I can, you know, when this thing, because these tires are so big and soft now, when I stuff a tire in a rock in a crack, it flips this thing over like nothing, and that's kind of scary. I don't want to be breaking gears all the time. So I really don't want to change this transmission out because it's shoehorned in there, and it's very compact, it's very flat, and it's very narrow, and it's got a good reduction. I can't remember. I think the planetary gear set in there is about a 4 to 1, and I can't remember what the pinion gear to the spur is, but the axles have a 2.66 to 1. Not a huge high ratio in the axles, but in the transmission with it all together, you get about 60 to 1, which is pretty good. You need it for these big tires to keep it slow. So the setup is good, it's just breaking itself, and I want to do something about it. We'll figure that out. This 35 turn CR01 motor, I like it. Drag brake is really good. Smoothness is good. It's not as perhaps smooth as a 5 slot, but with this amount of reduction, I think it's a good motor. I think it's a good setup. It's got bushings in it, so you're not gonna, get rusty bearings, worn out bearings. And it's got good punch with 3S. I'm running it on 3S. I can run it on 2S if I need to. Maybe that's one way to put less stress on the drivetrain, but with a 2S battery, this, it's pretty slow. If you kind of walk with it, it's going to be slow. And I don't want to be maxing out this motor. I don't even like maxing it out for an extended period of time with any battery, especially a 3S. It's not really, even though it's a higher turn motor, it can handle the 3S. It still bothers me to pull the throttle all the way. But so far, things are working out. I don't really feel any heat when I put my finger in here to check it after a half hour or an hour of playing around. It's not heating up, so I think it's safe. And it's cool that, the CR01 axles are here, the suspension's here, the transmission's here, the motor made for this specifically is here. What else is CR about it? The drive shafts, CR, they're made by Tamiya. They're nice steel drive shafts, very nice quality. We do have servo mounted axles, which is a must for this sort of rig. It came that way anyway. I made my own mounts to lower the position, to beef it up. And it's also, this mount incorporates the control arm mounts. Here you can see, here you can see where they mount. Sorry, my daughters just got home. They're trying to come in the living room, and I had to tell them I'm doing this video. So in the back, is this the back? This is the front. Yeah, there's the motor. In the front, I'm mounting these underneath the servo plate. The upper control arms in the front are mounted below, and in the back, they're mounted above. And I think that helps with anti-squat on this. One thing I might do in the future is, instead of having these arms be straight, I might make a new mount. I might make a new skid plate and locate these inward to give it some triangulation. We'll see how that goes, because what's going to happen is I'm going to have to make the mount farther out than here, so I don't have to change my lengths. Once you angle these in, they effectively become shorter. So I'll make the mounts here, and then I can make them double shear mounts instead of single shear. These do tend to loosen up. I mean, this plate is pretty thick. It's like 5 millimeter thick, but this is all just PLA. I'll probably change to some other material once I kind of solidify this design a little bit more, but this is a custom skid, and these side plates they're all going to change based on how I mount my shocks, where I want to mount my control arms. I was thinking about swapping these axles out, but I don't want to do that because it's just trying to mount the coil spring and all this stuff on each one on a different axle is going to be more work than I want to do. I like these axles, and I think I can avoid breaking pinion gears if I pay attention a little bit more while I'm crawling. Don't put the earbuds in so I can hear what's happening, and I'll avoid once a tire gets stuck, I'm gonna just go and hand to God the thing, not try to get out, because why bother? Yeah, so here it is from the side. I mean, it's real flexy, which is nice, but I gotta tell you, with this traction now that I have on these Pro Comp, which were real stiff with the foams, are really stiff with the original foams. They're super pliable now. The center of gravity in this thing is great. I can do. Last time I had it out, I was impressing myself with how this was performing. I really was. I can crawl down some really steep things and turn and side hill and crawl up some really crazy stuff, and it's kind of like, you know, I'm not gonna say it's as good as a Capra, because it's not, but it's does Capra-like things. I don't own a Capra, but I've seen them, and it does things like that. I mean, it's four-wheel steer. It's got a pretty good low center of gravity. Wheelbase is long. So yeah, I have fun with it, and I'm going to continue to have fun with it. Hopefully when the snow stops and melts away, I can get back out. I did do some videos. They didn't come out that great. I wanted to really demonstrate what this thing is capable of, and I was able to, but the videos just aren't, they don't do it justice, you know, they never do. So I'm going to work on that, try to post a video up of this running, because there's a few spots on my wall that are really challenging, and every time I go out and I do these sections, I learn more, and I try harder lines. I was trying harder lines than normal last time I was out, and being able to do it, and it was a great time. It was fun, and I like to do it with something completely obscure, like a CR01. You know, at least in the United States, people don't run these that much, because, you know, they're not. You know, when you buy one and you put it together out of the box, it's not competitive in any way. It's not, you know, the wheelbase is short, the center of gravity is high. It's overly complicated, which I like. It's interesting. And do like these cantilever shocks, because look how low they are. They mount them really low. But if you put enough time into anything, right, you can make it work. Like the way that I moved the chassis rails inbound, inward, you know, inboard and down, I was able to really lower the center of gravity, make a nice electronics tray area, battery placement up front, because originally I think the battery is placed in the rear on this setup from factory, and this is a rock soccer kit that I had. These are aftermarket. These are the upgrade springs. I can't remember what colors go in each one, but they're not the straight, they're the barrel springs. From the front end, you know, things all business, man. And the rear is basically the same. You got lots of articulation. And even, you know, and now that I upgraded these shocks, it's better damping, it's more control, it keeps the roll down, you know, keeps things from flopping around, and it's fun. Just got to be careful with it, like any Tamiya, right? You can't just beat on them until because they won't take a lot of abuse typically. So this is my labor of love, just because I don't want to buy another kit. It's more fun to modify it myself, change things around. But I think the next thing I'm going to do, like I said, I need to do these side plates. I don't like this pattern. I need to have better shock mounts. And I want to play around with the belly pan. Maybe triangulate the lower arms a little bit, get double shear mounts. One thing that isn't the greatest is the mounts for at the axle end. They're a flat mount from the bottom with one bolt, and if I had to put washers on the front, because if this thing articulates, they were popping off. The rod ends were popping off. The washers are keeping them on, so these things are getting pretty stressed. Yeah, that's about it. All right, have a good one. Thanks for watching. Let me see if I can find my mouse. All right, take care.